guys, welcome back to the Oden experience. My name is Josh, and today we'll be touching on a topic that is very personal to myself, along with a lot of others out there, I'm sure. Today's topic will be on anxiety. Now, more specifically, I'll be talking about my experience with anxiety and panic disorder. We'll be talking about identifying anxiety, and lastly, finishing off with treatment options and how you can help yourself going forward. So sit tight and we'll get right into it. So my experience with anxiety, just to preface this, I'll go ahead and tell you what I've been diagnosed with, so it makes a little bit more sense as I'm explaining this as we go along. The psychiatrist I'm seeing now has diagnosed me with 5 illnesses. The first one being panic disorder, mild depression, ADHD, PTSD, and a mild case of OCD. So as we get into this, that'll kind of make more sense. But to start off, my adventures with anxiety, I should say, it really started off when I was about 9 or 10 years old. Now, I guess that's kind of where the PTSD comes in, because roughly before, maybe a couple years before then, and especially around that age, there was a lot of changes that were going on in my life. And I was always moving, always making new friends, and it was very difficult for me. I don't know why, but it almost made me feel inadequate myself, that I couldn't keep friends even though it wasn't my fault. I look back at it now and I'm like, this doesn't really make sense, but at the time, when you're feeling your feelings, sometimes you really can't make sense of them. So I dealt with that, just kind of lingering anxiety, very bad at social. It developed into very bad social anxiety, and ended up I had a lot of self-esteem issues. I was very self-conscious growing up, things of that nature as well. But it really started to ramp up probably somewhere around by the time I was 19. And that led into my first panic attack. So my first panic attack happened at work while I was working at a drugstore. I was the front clerk, so as soon as you walk into the drugstore, I was the first person you saw. I was helping a customer at the time, and I started getting this overwhelming sensation of, I just got really lightheaded. A lot of fear kind of kicked in from nowhere. Chest tightened up, heart was beating really fast, and I didn't really know what was happening, right? So what I ended up doing is I basically kind of ran away from the customer over to the photo area where one of my friends and coworkers worked at the time. When I got over there, I actually went up to him, and I'm panicking. I don't know what's going on. This is the first panic attack. I've never experienced this before, and I'm just keep telling him, like, help me, help me, help me. I could tell that he got scared, and that made me more scared, because he didn't know what was going on. I couldn't explain it. I had no idea. So I ended up he's like, here, sit down. I'll get you some water. So I'm sitting down behind the counter, behind the photo area there, and the customer he was helping, she's probably mad because I literally just ruined her experience, right? She looks at me and asks me, she says, hey, were you smoking in the parking lot? And I'm thinking, that's kind of a weird question. I smoked cigarettes at the time, right? So I tell her, well, yeah, I just had a cigarette not too long ago. And she goes, your eyes kind of red. And I was just like, what the fuck? I was like, no, I smoked a cigarette out there. I was really taken back. She thought I was smoking weed in the parking lot, which I wouldn't do, right? So I don't know. So I had that experience with that, just really bad experience all the way around. I now look back at that and I see what she was doing, right? And that's kind of why I'm doing this video as well too, is there's a stigma with mental health issues, right? A lot of people don't quite understand them, and that's because I guess they're different for a lot of people. But she had taken a panic attack that I was having and essentially had tried to blame it on that I was doing drugs, right? And so she tried to justify in her eyes the reason you're acting like this is because you're doing something wrong. Now, unfortunately, I still feel that there's kind of a stigma out there for people who do have mental illnesses, and I don't think that's going to go away quite yet. But hopefully, with the more knowledge that everyone has, the better they can understand, then hopefully, people won't feel so trapped with these sorts of situations, like myself. When I first was dealing with this, I didn't really know how to tell anybody. I was very embarrassed. I would hide it to the point where I actually didn't even seek treatment for it until 4 years later. So 4 years later, 2013, my experience was I went to the first psychiatrist that I had ever seen. I expected that they were just going to fix it like it was a broken leg, right? Here, take this, take that, and you know what? You're going to be fine and good as new. Before I got up to that point, I was suffering from panic attacks pretty regularly, and that's what kind of motivated me to actually take that step to it. And I had also quit a lot of the coping mechanisms that I was using to mask this issue. I was drinking a lot, partying a lot, and I thought, hey, if I can mask this issue long enough, one day I'm gonna wake up and it's gonna be gone. I'm not gonna have to worry about it anymore, right? The longer I wait, and the more I just kind of try to focus on things outside of my life, and make them better, then hey, by the time I'm chilling and everything seems to be good, what am I gonna have? What am I gonna have to stress about? Everything's gonna be fine. That's not how really this works, right? If you have a disorder, it's different than just having regular stress. It's kind of hardwired into your brain, and breaking your leg and getting treatment for that is a lot different than having a mental disorder and getting treatment for it. The brain is a very complex organ. The mind is very, there's a thin line. It's strong, but it's also fragile at the same time. So treatment options, they aren't all the same, and it can take longer than some might think a lot of times. So back to the therapist, and how the medication issue went. They had given me some medications, and I was taking them regularly. They were depression medications. A lot of times when you get diagnosed with anxiety, they'll try to treat it with depression medication. Sometimes that works, like I said, with mental disorders, things work for things will work for somebody, but they won't work for another person. So, me personally, the depression medication they gave me did not work. What they did give me with that depression medication was anti-anxiety drugs. Something similar to Xanax, Ativan, Klonopin, something like that, right? And for 7 years, I would go back to this doctor. They would give me new depression medication, and none of it would work. It was basically got to the point where the only thing that was actually relieving my anxiety was the anti-anxiety medication. The problem is that medication become addictive. It's not a long-term solution. It's supposed to be there for emergencies, but I was having emergencies almost twice a day. I was having panic attacks, thinking I was going to die, literally on the brink of either a heart attack or a mental breakdown, and I needed something to to make sure that I didn't go over the edge. These were very physical, very severe, terrorizing moments for me. Just this year, actually, not last year, just this year, I ended up seeing another therapist. Now, here we are, 12 years after my first panic attack, 8 years after starting my first medication, I met the doctor who diagnosed me with the 5 mental illnesses that I have. I've been seeing him for, I think, since the beginning of this year, I believe. And I have to say that the medication that I was able to, work with him on is actually working, right? So this is the best that I've done, and I can't even tell you how long. Now, do I still have panic attacks? Yeah, unfortunately I do. I had one today, actually. I had one today while I was driving to the place I was working. I was about 45 minutes to an hour away. I get about half an hour, 40 minutes into the drive, and I had to pull over. I was getting the same feeling that I've been getting for the longest time, which is the chest tightening, can't breathe, heart racing, gonna have a heart attack feeling. It's just that impending doom feeling. But I did have my medication on with me. I took my medication, and by the time it kicked in, which is 30 minutes later, I was feeling a lot better. It is a lot easier for me nowadays to be able to handle that. Previously, without the medication and without the experience that I have, I would have gone full-blown panic attack and probably quite literally been running around a parking lot trying to breathe and just fidgeting and acting weird to the point where someone's going to notice and it's going to be very embarrassing. So that is a quick little summary of what I've been dealing with when it comes to anxiety and my experiences. But now we'll go ahead and go into how to identify anxiety. What are some signs of anxiety, symptoms of anxiety that you can look out for and say, hey, this matches the feelings that I'm having. So some of the common symptoms of anxiety will include feeling nervous, restless, or tense, right? So I know everyone can get nervous at times or get a little anxious in certain situations. So that's kind of like the first, lowest tier I like to think of. Because anxiety kind of ramps up sometimes. It'll start really low, for myself, for example. And then, a few minutes go by and full-blown panic attack. There's a few steps in between there, but kind of starts out with just a very uneasy feeling, more or less. The second one we're going to talk about is having an increased heart rate. So you get that uneasy feeling, your heart starts pounding, you're breathing rapidly, sometimes you're hyperventilating, not everyone does. You start to sweat or tremble, maybe feel weak or tired. And then it can turn into having that sense of the impending doom, right? Or the panic really starts to ensue. So it's kind of like a process usually, right? Some people, they have panic attacks when they are going to certain situations, social anxiety or, going to take a big test, or there's a medical emergency in the family, things of that nature, right? But other times, and specifically for myself, panic attacks can come at any point. Like I said earlier, essentially I was driving to work. Halfway through, I just got basically the feelings of, like I said earlier, the feelings of the nervousness, the uneasiness, and then everything else starts to kind of ramp up. The trembling, the sweating, my hands sweating more or less, knees weak, arms heavy, mom's spaghetti, increased heart rate, can't breathe, trying to breathe, tight chest, and then the worry starts to kick in, and then you're like, I'm worrying because I'm worried, and it turns into this vicious cycle thing, and then bam, you're having panic attacks. So those are kind of just that's kind of how anxiety can ramp up, right? Those with panic attacks can kind of understand, they understand when it ramps up, and I'm pretty sure they're familiar that they are having panic attacks. Some people don't understand that they really have anxiety and maybe just feel like they're actually just nervous. I'm not here to diagnose anybody. I'm not here to tell you, this is what this symptom means for you. What I'm here to tell you is that these are some of the symptoms And if you are experiencing some of these symptoms regularly, my advice is to see a medical professional, like I did. Don't wait to 4 years. Go see them now. And I can, and I'll hope for you that it didn't take the 7 years it took for me. I was very stubborn during that time. So just go in there open-minded and be fully transparent with your doctor, because I was just super stubborn and I didn't really tell them how I was feeling all the time, and I kind of just told them this and that and expected them to figure it out. But it doesn't work that way. It's a two-way street, right? They're only going to be able to help you if you're able to provide the information that they require, which is basically just spilling the beans on how you're feeling. I know it can be very scary for a lot of people. It can be very embarrassing for a lot of people. That's why people don't like to open up. They don't tell loved ones. They don't go seek treatment with medical professionals. They kind of just sit with it and do the same thing that I did and hope that it either goes away or mask it, and they just go untreated. And if you do that for long enough, speaking from experience, it eventually tries to become who you are, right? Like, tries to take over your life, and it tries to control the vehicle of your life, right? It tells you where you're going. It tells you what you're capable of, what you can't handle. And that's not where you want to be, right? Right now, luckily, with the right treatment and the right mindset about it and being transparent, I now control the anxiety. But granted, I still get panic attacks, and there's still moments, like, to be honest with you, I'm kind of anxious right now. Like, shooting these videos makes me a little anxious, I'm not gonna lie. But I want to do it because I want to talk about this, get this out there. Hopefully it'll help somebody. I could have used this a while ago for somebody just to say, hey, check it out, man. Here, like, lay it all out on the table. Don't be embarrassed. Don't be nervous. I mean, I've gone through so many moments where I've basically had panic attacks in front of random people at work. My loved ones who didn't know what was going on, I didn't tell them. I told, they think, I tell them I'm having a heart attack. What are they to know, right? I haven't told them anything. They think, shit, he's having a heart attack. Like, you got to be transparent with people you're around all the time. You don't have to tell the whole family if you're not ready to, but at least tell somebody, right? Tell somebody you can trust. That way they can help you along with your journey. You don't have to do it alone. You don't have to be, I can't stress enough, don't be embarrassed, right? A lot of people see it as like a sign of weakness. They can't be weak. They can't have, these feelings because, whether someone relies on you or, someone, quote unquote, just expects more out of you, things of that nature. It's just going to be harder for you long term if you just continue to kind of bottle it up. So go seek the treatment. Go get the help. Don't be quiet about it. If you're having some of these symptoms, then go get it checked out. Some of the anxiety disorders, the types they are, I'll kind of just read off a few, is, and I don't want to scare anybody with this one, right? Anxiety disorder due to a medical condition. So when I have gone in to get checked out for anxiety, I've actually gone to get like a physical, like basically gone to like the actual medical doctor to get blood taken, check my blood pressure, things like that and whatever. So, they checked my thyroid, check, my white blood cell counts and all sorts of crazy shit, right? Sometimes you can have anxiety due to medical, issues. Now, if you have anxiety, and it's very important to hear this part, okay? If you have anxiety or you feel that you have anxiety and you haven't been diagnosed with it yet, don't take what I'm saying now and and grab a medical issue, like there's something wrong with my heart, there's something wrong with my thyroid, my blood cell counts. Don't grab one of those things and think to yourself, oh my God, I have this because of this. Okay, I've done that, and all it does is just make it worse, right? I've said there's no way, it's my mind. Like, I growing up, I went through a lot of bullshit, and I'm stronger than this mentally. I have the mental fortitude to handle this, so it has to be a physical thing. No. I got checked out like 5 different times. Lungs are fine, heart's fine, thyroid's fine, everything's fine, right? But the anxiety will tell you that they're wrong and things of that nature. So if you are experiencing some of these things, I mean, it doesn't hurt to get a physical checkup if you haven't seen a doctor in a while. Next time you go to a physical checkup, tell them, hey, I'm experiencing some anxiety. It could be because of this, you can look it up if you want to. Just say, don't even look it up. Don't scare yourself. Just whenever you go, just say, hey, I have anxiety. Would you mind running a few tests just to make sure everything's fine with me? And then you'll get your test back, and then it'll probably be A-okay. Generalized anxiety disorder. So that would include like persistent, excessive anxiety, worrying about events and activities, right? Just like generally just a nervous person. If that's you, then hey, maybe you have a generalized anxiety disorder. I'm not going to diagnose you, but if you're always anxious, always nervous, always unsettled, then it might be a good idea just to maybe reach out and see if a medical professional can take a look and see if there's anything that can help you with, if it is something like an anxiety disorder. That might be a relief for you if there is something, and then they can get you some sort of treatment option that helps out. So panic disorder, which is what I have, essentially it is just repeated episodes of sudden feelings of intense anxiety, fear, or terror that reach a peak within minutes. You may have feelings of impending doom, shortness of breath, chest pain, rapid fluttering or pounding heart, and these panic attacks may lead to worrying about them happening again or avoiding situations in which they have occurred. So if you've had a panic attack, like for me, for example, I've had a panic attack in the shower a couple of times, and that week I would be nervous to go take a fucking shower. That's how bad my shit was. I couldn't be in that room alone. It was very difficult. Let's just say that. Again, things are much better now, and I'm very happy for that. I have the ability now to sit here and make this video, and I wouldn't have been able to do that when it was that bad, or do this when it was that bad. Separation anxiety usually happens in children, right? Going to kindergarten, things like that. So some of these, I should say, are not going to be disorders. Some of them are going to be pretty normal. A lot of people have social anxiety. A lot of kids have separation anxiety from their parents in certain situations. But there are times where it is more severe than just the kid doesn't, the kid's scared to go to school, to go to kindergarten and not see their mom, right? So they can be a little bit higher than your base average of general nervousness or anxiety. Social anxiety I want to touch on really quick. I think that there's a lot of social anxiety now, probably a lot more now than there used to be, and that is because of social media and all of the people that are on there trying to flex everything they got, and it's all about it's not about what you have, it's about what you don't have, right? People going out and spending just boatloads of money on shit they don't own just to take a picture with it and flex, and then everyone else feels a little bit more insecure. The normal person's gonna see that and be like, damn, I don't have that, I'm inadequate, I'm worthless, I'm this and that. They can start to build up a little bit of anxiety, and they don't really want to be around people because they feel like they're going to be judged for being lesser of a person than the person next to them is, right? It's unfortunate. I think it's a byproduct of what we have now, all these platforms. I mean, YouTube as well, right? So just kind of keep that in the back of your mind when you're scrolling, and you might get a little envious or jealous or start feeling a little down. Just understand that, a lot of these things are fake, and just because you see it on there doesn't mean it's true, doesn't mean that you're less of a person, doesn't mean that you don't have value, doesn't mean that the person next to you is better than you. I want you to remember that, because it's really important in today's day and age. I feel like people don't really pay attention to that, and I think that leads to mental issues that people usually don't get treated for. So, anxiety, I can't tell you if it's. I don't think anxiety. I think you can be like born with like if it's in your medical history and stuff like that. But I also feel like your conditions around you can basically manifest anxiety. So like when I was a kid, and I had all those rough years, and kind of everything else, and I thought I was just tough enough to handle it, but I was just masking everything. I think internally, all that the anxiety machine was just churning to the point where I got to the breaking point and having panic attacks. So just be careful of what you're ingesting, social media wise, or what's happening around you, and make sure that you do see the value in yourself that you deserve. So phobias are a type of anxiety, but we all know phobias, right? It's scared of spiders and friggin' bananas and whatever it may be. And another one, and the last one I'm going to touch on here, is the substance-induced anxiety disorder. So a lot of times when people take medication that they're not prescribed, that they're not needing, such as anti-anxiety medicines like Xanax and stuff like that, right? You hear a lot of like rappers and stuff talking about how taking Xanax. The problem is when you get into this habit of taking Xanax, it is an addictive drug, habit-forming drug, and if you stop, it can actually cause anxiety. It can actually give you anxiety when you stop taking it. So these guys are taking it. People are taking it for fun because they're trying to get high, and they stop taking it, because they're like, all right, I'm going to take it for a few days, or I'm take it for like a couple weeks. They stop taking it. They can actually develop anxiety from it. The way it was described to me, that how these drugs work, is they basically numb a part of your brain that will essentially allow you not to. It almost like dulls you down, kind of like when you drink a bunch of alcohol, right? And you get a little bit more courage and less, nervous or less scared of things, kind of like that, right? But when you stop taking it, it's almost like the drug puts like a roof onto how nervous or anxious you can get, right? And then when you take that away, when it reaches above that threshold again, then anxiety can induce anxiety essentially, and you can develop these anxiety issues even though you never experienced them before. So I think unfortunately that's another huge thing that's happening. It's a popular drug. People are taking it, they're abusing it, and the next thing you know, they're developing anxiety issues. Alcohol can do the same in a sense, not as bad, obviously. But for me, for example, if somebody who has anxiety, if I drink a lot, the next day when I'm hungover, I usually have anxiety too. I usually am like, oh, my body feels like shit, and then all of a sudden, like, my brain doesn't have the capacity to like handle the anxiety, like to fight it away. So it ends up like just taking over, and then I get really anxious and shit. It sucks. But a lot of people use alcohol too to cope with anxiety when they get anxious. I had a family member who did that. Doesn't do it anymore. Proud of them. But yeah, so just be aware of the certain the certain things that may be able to kind of induce anxiety, the symptoms of the anxiety, and just knowing these in general should help you. Having that knowledge, it should help you be able to not make mistakes into kind of creating anxiety for yourself, and then B, identify the anxiety so that way you can take that information, take that to a medical professional, which I recommend, talk to them, whether it be a medical doctor, therapist, psychiatrist, and then get their opinion on how you can seek treatment going forward. So that pretty much wraps up the scratch the surface of my experience with anxiety, some of the symptoms, and some things you can do to avoid giving yourself anxiety, and of course my recommendation for if you have these symptoms, maybe seek professional treatment. I do want to go ahead and leave you with one last thing, and that is to remember that anxiety is it's fluid, right? It's a mental illness. It's fluid. Again, it's not like breaking your leg and just being able to fix it, right? Be kind to yourself or a loved one who might be, you think might have, some issues with anxiety. Be kind, be loving, be patient. This is not a race to see how fast you can get it done. It's a progressive thing, life's a marathon, right? Living with anxiety, living with the mental illness is a marathon as well. So you just have to make sure that you're taking that time, being patient with yourself, and and continue on the right path that you feel is best for you. So again, thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch this video. I sure hope it helps somebody. I can tell you that I feel a little bit better after talking about all of this. But if you're out there and this helped you, then that makes me happy. Again, I'm going to go ahead and try to create a Discord for it, try to create a community. Should anyone want to join, I'll be there for words of encouragement or, any non-medical advice that, I can provide. And going forward, I want to tackle a couple, some other issues, I should say, mental issues and things of that nature. And we'll see how these videos turn out. Go ahead and leave some feedback if you could. Make sure that you like, share, subscribe, turn the notification on. That way the next time a video drops, you can check it out. But until then, guys, thank you again so much. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Peace.